While paid subscription models have been all the rage for the last decade, more and more creators are turning to online courses as a way to monetize their audiences. Their evergreen nature makes them ideal for generating passive income, and many creators have succeeded at selling them at relatively high price points. But what's the best way to develop a course that your audience will actually want? And how do you market it to that audience? I recently convened a panel of professional course creators to answer these questions. We talked about everything, including identifying course topics, setting prices, and choosing the best platform to host your course. Hello, I'm Simon Owens, and this is The Business of Content, the show about how publishers create, distribute, and monetize their digital content. This episode is actually a recording of a Zoom series I do called Office Hours. Several times a month, I pick a topic and then assemble a panel of experts on that topic. These are live discussions where all attendees are actively encouraged to participate and contribute. If you want to join these calls, then you need to subscribe to my newsletter. Go to simonowens.substack.com. That's simonowens.substack.com. Okay, let's jump into the discussion. Okay, with all that being said, let's jump into this session. So in this session, we're talking about selling online courses. This just happened to coincide with a newsletter that I published yesterday. That doesn't always happen. I didn't plan for that to happen, but it was a nice bit of synergy that it did. And, I'm seeing more and more creators go the online courses route now, and sometimes eschewing other models like subscriptions and ebooks. So it's like definitely one of the fastest growing sectors within the creator economy. And as I wrote about in my piece in my newsletter article yesterday, is because there's all kinds of, benefits to it in the sense of, creating content differentiation that allows you to kind of carve out something that's different from what everybody else is publishing, the ability to connect with your audience more directly, especially if it's a live course, and then also the ability to sell kind of evergreen content. So you're not constantly on this treadmill of having to create paid content. It's creating this one piece of really good paid content and then focusing on your free audience and basically slowly converting them into actual customers for your courses. So there's all kinds of cool dynamics with courses that you don't get with other monetization models. So that's why I'm excited to talk about them today. So we have several featured guests on this session. Let's run through them really quickly. We got Mignon Fogarty, longtime friend of mine. She's the host of the Grammar Girl podcast, one of the most successful podcasts on the planet, a New York Times bestselling author. She's one of the founders of the Quick and Dirty Tips Network, which is done through Macmillan Podcasts. And she's been a really successful course creator around several writing and grammar course. We have John Bijakovic. Am I pronouncing this correctly?
Very good.
Bijakovic. He is the creator behind several copywriting courses. We have Russell Nolte. He runs something called Writer MBA, and he's done several courses around that. We have John Gannon, who's founded two companies, GoingVC.com and Venture 5 Media. He does some interesting stuff around courses and membership, which we'll get into. And we have, lastly, Stephanie Fuccio. Am I pronouncing that correctly? She's nodding her head yes. And she's created several podcast mini courses. So I was looking at her mini courses she's selling on Gumroad, and those will be interesting to dive into. Okay, all that being said, let's jump into it. And, when I call on people for the first time, just give us like the 15-second spiel of what you do in courses, just so we have kind of like a very kind of brief understanding of what you do. But Mignon, let's start with you. And I want to start broad before we start narrowing out. Let's say someone were approaching you today and they were wanting to start a course and they were looking for your advice. Like, what are some questions or advice you would pose for them to get them kind of thinking about launching a course? Like, what is the kind of advice that you would give yourself when you were just first starting out that you wish you knew?
Sure. Well, first, a little spiel. I have 5 LinkedIn Learning courses that cover writing topics, and I twice a year do an AP style course with Reagan Communications. The LinkedIn Learning is recorded and the Reagan course is live. Often, when the AP style course comes out, I get questions about, well, do I have one about Chicago style? And the advice, it leads into the advice I would give someone is, what is the business purpose of your course? Because it is much easier to get someone to pay for something when it's related to their work than when it's just a hobby or an interest. So, the AP style course is successful because journalists and PR people need to know AP style for their job. And a lot of times their companies will pay for that course. I always in my marketing say, if you have training budget, sign up for this course. So I think the biggest piece of advice I have is why would someone, how can your course, think about how your course can help someone be better at their job.
Yeah, so like defining the problem it's going to solve for someone, and kind of thinking through this use case of like, why would someone sign up for this course? Like, how is this going to make something better in their life, is what you're saying.
Right. Like, I don't think there's a big enough use case for a Chicago Manual of Style course because it's more used, in the humanities than in the business world. So I don't do a course on that because I'm not sure I could sell it.
Yeah.
Can I add to that quickly?
Sure.
So one of the other use cases, I totally agree. One of the other use cases though is, what advice are you sick of giving? Like, that's what I created my first courses and I was like, oh, like, okay, well, here it is. My first nonfiction books and then my first courses were like, if I make this course, will you stop annoying me about this?
Yeah.
And it just kept going up a value ladder until it was like, okay, I had a book, I had a course, I had coaching. And then if you are doing coaching right now, one great thing is I tell people that there's usually about 80% of coaching that you hate doing because it's all like the base level stuff that you don't actually want to talk about. So doing a course that's just all of the base level stuff and adding it into a coaching as like a required bit of reading. And I'll say, I will not do coaching with you until I see this bar at 90% or 80% or whatever number you want to give them.
And like you said, like, a question that people keep on answering or asking you over and over again, is it like people writing emails to you, or it's literally just like when you were doing the one-on-one coaching, the questions they were asking over
so
and over
I
again?
do a lot of conventions, and so it was a lot of people stopping me at conventions while I was trying to sell something to other people. It was people on like things like this that would, they keep asking the same 5 questions, and it was a lot of just like literally all of the things you said times 100.
Yeah. And what was a question that someone kept on asking you over and over again that you're like, that's a course?
So I have a book called How to Build Your Creative Career. And it was based on like the 50 questions people asked me. So it was how to build your audience from scratch. How do you sell at live events? How do you launch a product? How do you build a sales funnel? How do you get in the right mindset to sell? Like, what happens if you fail? Like, what happens if I think I suck? Like, basically all of the things that people ask me. And I was like, here's a book. And then they were like, yeah, but like, how do I actually like build a fan base? And so I was like, well, I would need to like actually go through and like screen share and do presentations. It would cost me a whole lot of time and energy. They were like, I will pay for that. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I went and I actually did screen shares, and then people asked me more advanced questions. And then that's where the coaching came in. So it was just like, I did not expect to do nonfiction. Nonfiction came out of just like the inability the ability to stop being hassled by being asked the same questions. Also, hi, I'm Russell. I made all these books and I run Writer MBA.
Yeah. Mignon, so like you get a ton of inbound because you're like the go-to grammar source. Does that ring true to you, of like, using your own audience and the questions they're asking as a way to kind of guide you for like if there's a market for a course?
Absolutely. Yes. And, it made me think of another thing I kind of had to get over to do the AP style course, because I keep thinking these people, the AP style book is $20. They can go buy it and read it. Like, why, why do they want to pay hundreds of dollars for a course? But, it's like some people would just rather take a course, watch a video, especially when, their company will pay for it. So yeah, I think you have to get over that feeling that, well, this is the really basic stuff. People could learn this on their own. It's easy to learn, and realize that there is an audience who want that basic information.
Simon, can I ask, when we're talking about a course, are we talking about email series? Are we talking about videos? Are we talking, I know I guess going to talk about podcasts. What exactly are we talking about when we say course?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of all the above, and I think we're going to kind of dive deeper in that. Like for you, Mignon, it's actually like a course that you are pre-recording, and that basically you're acting as like an instructor. It's highly edited. I think you even have like a production team, and then they're just like consuming that on their own time. You're not doing that live or anything like that.
Right. The LinkedIn Learning courses they have a great production team, highly produced, pre-recorded. They're less than an hour, broken into 2 or 3 minute videos for each topic. The Reagan AP Style course is live. And so one of the things we advertise too is like, you can ask me questions live. And that's one of the selling points for that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we're going to get into is live versus on demand and the benefits and downside, the benefits and downsides of that. I didn't see who asked that question. Tony, was it you? Did we answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
Awesome. And I think like, yeah, there are other courses like email courses and stuff like that. So I definitely encourage, if any of our guests have experimented with the email courses versus video, to definitely let me know. But, moving on, John B, I'm going to, Bijokovic, sorry, I'm going to continue. I apologize. I'm going to continue to stumble on that. How should we be thinking about, going broad versus going, narrow? Russell was talking about, answering these questions that they keep on going over and over again, but like at some point you have to decide like how focused you're going to be, and, whether you're going to be teaching very specific skills or if they're looking for more general knowledge around the topic. How do you kind of think about that in terms of like picking a course topic?
In my experience, it's been, I've done both, and I've done something. So
first, just tell us a little bit about your course.
Sure. So I did freelance copywriting for a long time, sales copywriting, and there's a lot of interest in people who want to become copywriters, and there's a lot of people who are business owners who want to write sales copy for their own, let's say, courses or for their own offers or products. And so I've created several courses that are teaching people about the basics of sales copywriting, as well as specific formats, for example, emails. And in my experience, it's almost hard to do a course that's too specific, because I feel like it's very tempting to try to put everything into a course and to squeeze everything into a course and to put your entire knowledge into that and to try to take somebody from a complete newbie to where you are as an expert in this field. And from what I've seen, both in terms of how people go through these courses and how people are willing to buy them, that doesn't tend to sell as well as a very specific course that's much more narrow and much more niche down to a specific outcome that you want to get people to have, as well as to specific proof, that I think somehow that proof that what you're teaching people will actually deliver on that promise. So I don't think it's often enough just to say, I will teach you, for example, copywriting, but somewhere in there, you need to have some sort of a mechanism that that convinces people that what you're actually saying is true. And I feel like in many situations, that's easier to do the more narrow you are. So oftentimes recently I've been picking very, very specific topics, and I find that those tend to sell as much larger, broader courses. And if I could go back and tell myself anything is to take, a course that was a giant course that I'd created and to break it up into 5 or 10 smaller courses, which would probably sell as many copies individually as that initial course sold in total.
Well, one thing I've noticed is that a lot of creators, they start with their first course is very broad. It's kind of like a more 101 course, and then they go down and drill down and get more specific. Do you think that kind of rings true as a way to kind of start broad and then start narrowing down and doing subsubjects, like subtopics within that broader topic?
I think you definitely can. And I think a big part of this is simply your own psychology in terms of what do you feel comfortable doing in the beginning, and what do you feel like, what's a course that you can actually deliver? And if that's what you need to do, then absolutely do it. At the same time, I don't think it's a necessity. And I think that in many ways, I think a much more niche down course is easier to create, it's faster to get out, and it can be more valuable ultimately to people, even though, again, it's very intuitive to think that a bigger course that has more information, that's promising a bigger result, that's taking people from, from 0 to 100 rather than from 0 to 5 or from 5 to 10 or from 10 to 20. Intuitively, that feels like it would be much more valuable, but somehow, somewhere in people's psychologies, that doesn't translate in the same way. And so in my experience, if I could go back, is I would say, don't even fall into, I wouldn't say the trap necessarily, but don't go down that road, and simply focus on having a very clearly defined course, something that is clear in your head, that's clear in people's heads in terms of the position of what it is that you're promising, and that you can deliver in a reasonable amount of time, both to produce it and for people to go through it.
And what's an example of like a more specific copywriting course that you created?
Sure. So I write a daily email newsletter. Basically, I write a daily email on some topic related to copywriting or marketing or of just general psychology, which might be relevant to sales. And over time, I've realized that one thing that I really enjoy doing in my own emails is taking an idea, a copywriting idea or a marketing idea, and rather than talking about it, rather than having some sort of pop culture illustration of that idea, but actually putting that idea into practice and kind of having a live demonstration of that. And I've created a course specifically about writing emails, or I guess other kinds of content that are for people who are writing about marketing or copywriting, and who want to take this approach of doing a demonstration of a marketing idea. So it's kind of a inception style, course. And that's honestly been my best-selling course to date, even though I've had much, much broader courses, but something which is very, very narrow, and which just has this promise of for me, this kind of email has been, writing these kinds of emails repeatedly has been very valuable. And I keep repeating to people that this is a great way to get better at copywriting, a great way to kind of give people an aha moment while they're reading your emails. And it's translated into sales, and people really like that. And I've also had a lot of people get back to me and say, this course is amazing, it blew my mind. And it's because I think a big part of it is simply because it's very kind of narrow and it's very easy to get through, rather than 6-week-long project, which some of my other courses were. This is basically an afternoon-long course.
John Gannon, what are your thoughts on kind of like the broad versus narrow debate?
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Happy to answer that. And I'll just give a real quick 15-seconder of what I do, just so people have the context. So I'm the co-founder of 2 businesses in the venture capital and startup education and media space. One is called goingvc.com. One is called Venture5 Media. And in aggregate, those businesses have grossed over $1 million in online course revenue. The sort of build on what John was saying is 100% agree that going niche into specific pain point that your subscriber has and offering them a solution in that is it's the way to go. I would say in the medium to the long term. The challenge that you're going to run into is that how you sell the course is going to have to change. So what I mean by that is what I've historically done in my business is big launches. So course comes out, big launch it to my whole list. And conversion rates, I don't know what other folks are seeing on the call, but when I do a big launch of a product that's say $200 or above, I'm seeing say 0.5% conversion rate on that to sale. What I started experimenting with, and now I'm leaning in super hard, is I now have basically interest funnels where, depending on what a subscriber does or how they respond to a survey, it actually puts them into a very specific sales sequence related to the problem that they are trying to solve. And for the first one that I ran around a resume review productized service, the conversion rate I've seen on that small sample size so far, because again, you're looking at a smaller audience, you're really trying to find those right people, around 15%, wow. Which is huge increase, but you have to put in the effort to identify who they are. And then there's got to be a custom sales pitch around that. And that takes time to get there. I think for folks who are just getting started, it's maybe you go more generalized and just frankly, you got to get it out there, right? Because then you're going to learn and figure out what else does your audience need.
And so you're creating like a tag, like a resume tag. So when people click on links that have that resume tag, then they're in that funnel for like, how are you putting people into these funnels?
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to geek out, I can show you a screen share of what I have going on in ConvertKit. But what happens when people subscribe to my newsletter is they get sent to a thank you page, and then there's a survey there. It's a product called Right Message that I use, and it's a button-based survey, right? You click a couple things. And for people who click those things, then the automations in ConvertKit will basically notice that and then pitch them the appropriate product. And if they don't fill out any of that, they get pitched like the sort of the more generic product.
Yeah, cool. Well, now that we're kind of on the topic of kind of the marketing, let's talk a little bit more about how to convert, people into course customers. Russell, what are the kinds of like free content and marketing strategies you could create to drive people down that purchasing funnel? Like I was looking at several of your courses or several of your websites of the people on this call, and some of you are creating kind of like newsletter content, but other people were creating like more SEO friendly content, like trying to answer questions around their niche. How do you think about how the free content interacts with the paid content?
So this is tough because we used to do a lot of free stuff and now we do almost no free stuff, and it's still working out with us, for us. I think that one really great piece of free content is better than 100 okay pieces, especially with how SEO is probably going to move in the next year with like Bard and ChatGPT and all of the things that are going to come along to like revolutionize, change, or destroy search in some way. I'm not 100% sure if it is a great idea to like build a million different small streams to try and rank if you're starting from scratch. You will eventually rank over time, because if you do content like this, or you go on podcasts, you write blog posts, or you do over time, you just will accumulate a body of work. But I think the most important thing when I think about how to drive people through the funnel is to have a piece of content. So a drip series or an email or an email course or something for each vertical that you're going to talk to and talk about. So for instance, I do most of my talking about Kickstarter. So we have a free Kickstarter course. We have a podcast called Kickstart Your Book Sales. We have videos. We have all sorts of stuff about Kickstarter. But when I go on to talk about Kickstarter, I have a very specific goal to get people to, I don't even remember the link anymore because it's been a couple of months. I think it's kickstartyournovel.com, because I mostly talk to authors. And from there, like they will be able to sign up for a whole bunch of content and then get dripped out a series to explain to them, because you're mostly here, if you're hearing about Kickstarter for the first time, like, what is Kickstarter? You probably will go to that link and then be like, oh, well, okay, I'm kind of interested. I'm probably not going to listen to a podcast, but I do want to get more information. So maybe you'll pick up our book on Kickstarter, or more likely you'll like sign up for free resources or tips to bring someone through the funnel to being like, I understand Kickstarter now. Thanks, I hate it. Thanks, I hate you. Thanks, I love you. Thanks, I love Kickstarter and I want to learn more immediately and I'm willing to pay for it. And I want to go all in on Kickstarter right now. Wherever you fall on that spectrum, I need to get you to the point that you at least have the knowledge. The thing that people usually miss, and I've missed in doing the free content before, is they try to give too much. They try to give this big arcing scope of everything, where it's better to explain the scope of the opportunity. And if you can get that in a good like email sequence or a good webinar, because we also have webinars. And I have 2 webinars, one that I ran for years when I was just trying to get people to not pay me money and leave me alone about Kickstarter, which was all of the advice about like exactly how to make your campaign. It had like why people back, like all of the sections. It was like very extensive in an hour. And it was terrible at conversions because people left that and were like, whoa, that is way too much. Like my brain is broken, or like, thank you. Now I'm going to take all of this information that you gave me for free and like make my thing. However, we moved it to doing a thing which was like the 5 places or 3 places you don't know. I think it was the 5 places you can make money on Kickstarter that you don't know about. And like, we literally were like, hey, here is how you make money in the pre-launch phase. Here's how you make money in this phase. And like, by the end of it, we're like, and if you want to maximize all of those things, here is a course that's $1,000. And if you don't want to, that's okay. But like, you will still need to find more information. Either you'll have to consume my podcast, or you'd have to do we would have to do our free course or something to get more information. You don't have it all and you're not overwhelmed. And generally, I find what John B said to be accurate, where like, people try to do this big, broad scoping course, but what people want, people don't care about any of this stuff. Like, I'm sure all of everyone's content is amazing, but people only care about how your content will transform their life in a positive way. It doesn't matter if it's a course, doesn't matter if it's a potato, doesn't matter if it's a pill. Like, what they want is to feel the way that it will feel to step into their career where like they can build a sustainable income. And for us, that was Kickstarter for a long time. But like, the transformation is not like use Kickstarter because Kickstarter is great. It's like, don't you want to like make an actual living as a creator? Well, here is the system that we have, which is run through Kickstarter or direct sales and kind of build out over time. But it comes back to that free content and people saying, well, I heard about Kickstarter and now I need to know more. I don't.
Yeah. And so you mentioned you charge like $1,000 for your course, and I think that's something I definitely want to spend some time on this session talking about is pricing, because there's just like, there's a wide range of prices. So there are some people who charge a lot of money because they're helping these people do something with their career. So the payoff is potentially big. Steph, I noticed when I was looking at your Gumroad, you're out of everybody, you're charging the least. You're only charging $25 for course, but you call them mini courses. Like, what is your thinking around like the pricing and stuff like that?
I only started this 2 months ago, and I originally had my Substack newsletter. I had one Substack newsletter at that time. At this point, I have 2. I was monetizing that, but I hit a cap and I was just not getting past it. And it was a lot more work to keep track of the subscribers than the funds that were coming in. And I was seeing some folks do much simpler courses than what I had in my head and had planned out on paper over time. Like, I had planned out like 18 like different sessions to do to make this giant micro podcasting course that would change the world and all this stuff. And I just never got around to it because the thought of actually doing every single part of that was just so overwhelming. So when I started to see people do these kind of like micro sessions, basically like webinars, like 30 to 60 minutes on one specific topic, with just value drench people with information and resources, and that's it. And then they walk away with that information. I was like, that's my kind of course. And that's when I started to make them. And even though it's only been 2 months, I think I just put up my 8th one yesterday, which is kind of fast for me. And there's assets that go with them too. It's not just the recording. They get the MP4, and because I am a podcaster, MP3. They get timestamps, they get some assets. So they get like a whole thing that goes with it. But the reasoning for the pricing, sorry, Simon, I went on from your question, is that I'm still testing it out because it's only 2 months. I'm testing out who's interested, what are they interested in? And in order to get the most data, I feel like it has to start low, and then once I kind of know who is consuming it, then I can price it probably more accordingly.
Yeah. I wonder if it seems like, so like some people, they spend 6 months on a course and just release like 1 or 2 a year. Seems like you're trying to, put lots of smaller courses together that you can put out almost on a more regular basis. So you have like a larger library to work with. And maybe that's somewhat of why you're charging a little bit less, but it sounds like you're undercharging a little bit.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, you're putting a lot of work into this if you're creating video and audio and timestamps and all that kind of stuff.
Probably. And I played with like $50 with a slight discount, or $30 with a discount, or this with this and that. I've been playing with the price a bit. And I finally just said, you know what, until I get the courses that I want up there and start hitting on ones that people are really like massively consuming, I'm just going to put them all at 25, no discounts. I don't want to keep track of a lot of things. I want to make the content, I want to reach the people, and I want to have it be accessible. Because I came from the indie podcasting space into being a podcast editor and service provider. And I feel like in servicing businesses, I've kind of left a lot of my indie friends behind. So part of it is also accessibility. I want people to be able to afford the courses, even if they can't do a consultation or like hire me for a monthly service or stuff like that. So there's a few different reasons behind it.
Yeah, John Gannon, I'll call you on a second about the Champagne customers. Tanya, you mentioned that Josh Spector has some advice around pricing for courses. Oh.
Yeah. So yeah, Josh Spector is he's got these skill sessions, are like $40, and he has his daily he has a daily newsletter as well. And they're such easy plugs for him, and they're on this sort of vein of the micro courses and these micro sessions. But they work really, really well. That price point is good. And it works well when you have a daily email, I found, just because it's like not a huge launch, it's not a big sell, it's just a really easy plug. And then he aggregates them all in one page, I believe. And it's also really nice for like swaps. So in the same way that people do newsletter swaps, you could do like these course swaps, which I've been seeing a lot more of.
Interesting.
And yeah, so it kind of opens the door for that. And, you know, rather than like hand over a $2,000 course, like, yeah, let me just give you a coupon code, you know, for your community. This is, you know, it's a $40 skill session.
Yeah, awesome. John, you have John Gannon, you have entrepreneurs, tech people, VCs subscribe to yours. So you probably think that courses should be more expensive, right?
I mean, my thinking on how courses should be priced has evolved over time, just as I've launched more courses. So when I started, I was sort of on the lower end. I don't even remember my first course, what I originally charged for it, maybe $100, $150, something like that. But, you know, I've sold everything from that price range all the way up to my Going VC program, which is $7,000 for a 16-week program. And one misconception and thing that like my thinking is evolved around is there's someone named Mariah Cause who has this concept of a champagne customer. And the champagne customer, it's very counterintuitive. It's, you know, basically saying that, hey, just because you are selling a thing that is more expensive and has higher value doesn't mean that you necessarily need to do more work to make that sale. So I was always under the impression, hey, this is thousands of dollars. I'm going to need to get on the phone with people, right? I'm going to need to do direct sales calls. And that's actually like, I've sort of seen that isn't always the case. I've seen people convert for a $2,000 offering literally in the last month, where they had been on my newsletter for like 2 weeks. And I don't think I'm any different than any other creator. I just think that, you know, I had sort of told a story to myself that, oh, like for those higher priced products, you're going to have to spend more time selling it. And it may not actually be the case. There's people out there who you're never going to hear from, but they're watching what you're doing and they're going to convert on that higher priced offer potentially. So something to keep in mind, you know, as you're kind of growing the course business and thinking about, you know, when I go out market, is it going to be more work? And the answer is maybe not necessarily.
Yeah. And I think like one of the benefits of courses of why so many creators choose them over subscriptions is like subscriptions, like most of them are kind of low priced. And the appeal of a course is that you just spend a lot of time just really honing like this one really good piece of content that's evergreen in nature, but then you want to generate more per customer on it in order to make the economics worse or better, I mean. So whereas with like, you know, if you're pricing it too low and then you sell it to your audience at whatever conversion rate's going to be, then you have to like, you know, hurry up and create another course in order to like make the economics of it work.
Yeah, for sure. And also, I don't know if folks here follow Ramit Sethi. He's built a huge, you know, sort of media and education business around a lot of it around online courses. And he makes a point about just sort of like how price point correlates to the type of customer. And in his thesis, which I kind of buy, is like for lower price products, you might actually have to do more work to support that customer versus the person who's paying a few hundred or $1,000 for a course. Like you might have more customer service and things like that to deal with someone who's actually paying you less, which is like counterintuitive, but it's just something else to keep in mind. And ultimately it's up to the creator. Like what kind of business do you want to build, right? It's totally up to the creator.
Well, and we've actually run the data on this in our own network, and the people who spend the most are the people who complain the least. Like and we went from selling like $50 products to selling, now we have a mastermind called the Future of Publishing, and like it's $2,500, and the ease with which people will just buy that thing like it doesn't make any sense to me still, and I'm living it.
Yeah, I have a lot of experience in the consulting world, and that's like a well-known adage within the consulting world is the clients that nickel and dime you are usually the biggest pain in the asses versus the ones who pay you the most and don't even blink at, a high retainer. Tony, you had a question for the group about, ways to advertise courses.
Yeah, I mean, hearing about being able to sell a $2,500 course successfully, I think certainly sounds very attractive, but just wondering how you reach your customers. I'm guessing a lot of us on here have email newsletters. Obviously you would use those, but what are some other ideas for letting people know that these courses, exist? Is it Google ads? Is it hanging out in, Reddit chat rooms? I mean, word of mouth. I mean, what are the most successful vehicles for letting people know that these exist?
So we've had good luck with LinkedIn ads, and I invited Davina from Quick and Dirty Tips to join us today. And Davina, do you want to jump in and maybe talk a little bit about the success you've had placing those LinkedIn ads for us?
Davina, okay.
Sorry, hi. I wasn't expecting to be on the call today. Yeah, so we've done a couple of things with LinkedIn ads. We support those with newsletters and general social media. We have experimented with video ads. We found the most success last year with really just like a static LinkedIn ad. Also targeting, the people who are going to buy the course for their team, because we're usually using those ads for Reagan, the AP style, which we do with Reagan. Because it's more expensive, that's not something that like an individual podcast listener is necessarily buying. That's something that a team is purchasing. And so our goal with the LinkedIn ads is to target the people who are going to buy several of those courses for a whole team.
And are you like targeting by like job title or just company, or like how are you targeting those ads?
Again, it's something we're still experimenting with. I have worked on job title with AP style. It's very specific of like journalist and executive editor and things like that. We've also done in LinkedIn, you can target based on like seniority and industry. It can get a little complicated because LinkedIn sometimes doesn't like certain things. And then also making sure that our language reflects that we're targeting that. So not just buy this course to improve your AP style, but buy this course so your team can write with confidence. So your team is going to feel supported. So you can use your training budget, as Mignon said.
Yeah. So like the editor, they're seeing it like it's geared towards the ad is recognizing that they might not be buying it for themselves. They're buying it for the reporters that work under them or something like that.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. John B., do you do anything to advertise your courses other than just the free content you're creating?
So one thing that I've had success with is doing affiliate deals, basically finding other newsletters in very, very similar newsletters to mine and agreeing to have an affiliate promotion with them. So they basically drive their readers to my sales page or even to an opt-in page where, people get onto my list. And then if they buy within some period of time, then I credit that to the person and I pay them that. I feel like that's a very kind of natural way for me to advertise, and it's very congruent because these tend to be like probably customers who are buying things that are very similar to what I'm selling, and the kinds of customers that I want to have.
What kind of percentage do you give them?
I've done everything from, let's say, 50% of the like front end product to 100% of the front end product plus all the upsells that I'm selling. My reasoning is that if I can make money on one of these affiliate deals, that's great. But if I don't make money, but I still get a customer who spent maybe $400 or $600 with me, that's still a very valuable asset to me. Somebody I want to have on my list because I'm going to have another offer in next month or 2 months time or 3 months time. And people have paid me a lot of money, even if I've given that money back to the person who sent me that lead. That's somebody who's very likely to buy things from me again. And I want to have that person on my list.
That's awesome. So I have a question for Mignon, but I also want other people to answer it if they, have any good thoughts on it. But Mignon, you've mentioned that you do a mixture of both on-demand and live courses. I think one thing that attracts a lot of creators to this is the on-demand course because they like the idea of the passive income. But I think in consumers, like they value the live courses more, especially when you're competing with a lot of free content on like tutorial content on YouTube. Like, how do you think about free versus live? What does your audience value more? How do you need to price them differently? Like, can you talk about free versus the benefits of free versus, or not free, sorry,
Recorded.
pre-recorded versus live?
That's so funny because I was just talking to my husband last night. So I have a live course coming up with about AP style. In the course, the first three quarters of the course is the same every time because AP style, the basics matter. And then the last quarter of the course is the new stuff and that has come out in the last year. They're always updating too. And I was thinking, well, I could record that first 3 quarters and just play that, and then just do the live part at the end. And after we talked about it, it's like, yeah, no, people want live. Like they're signing up for it because it's live. They would not be happy if I record, even though, I think I could use that every time and it's evergreen and it'd be so much easier. But I think that market part of the selling proposition, if you want to say, is that it's live. So yeah, it's and the LinkedIn learning courses, it's funny because live is actually easier. You just show up and you have to make slides and be prepared and have the knowledge and everything, but it's easier because it would be extra work to record it and edit it and everything. So the LinkedIn learning courses are actually much more work, but they're less expensive. So it's kind of interesting.
That is interesting, but they're more scalable because you can sell them in perpetuity. So even though they take a little bit of extra work, maybe that's worth it if you have like a long tail customer base like you do. Who else has some thoughts on the live versus pre-recorded? John Gannon?
Yeah, I think you can sort of have your cake and eat it too in some instances. And I would definitely echo like the value of the creator live interacting with their audience it's like the most valuable thing, right? So, but on the flip side, it can be unscalable, right? And so what I've started to do in my business is for anyone who buys a course, they basically are invited to a monthly-ish live office hours. And so if they're available, they show up. I mean, Simon, I guess in a way it's kind of similar to your model, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And whether there's 10 or 20 or 2 people, like it doesn't really matter to me, right? I'm there and I'm able to give that live Q&A feedback. And it really resonates with folks, and I can do it like when I want to do it. And I can, there's kind of zero marginal cost to support additional folks who decide to come to that. And I found it works really well.
Yeah. Anybody else have any thoughts before we move on the live versus John B?
Yeah, I can say to that, I've launched a few courses live and then turned them into evergreen courses. And for me, it's been great in several different ways. I think one is what we've been saying, that basically I think it's much easier to charge higher prices. But then I think just simply the psychology of having a set date when I need to deliver this forces me to actually get it out, rather than taking an extra, 2 to 3 or 4 months of, gradually producing this stuff. And so it's just been a way of putting it out there, forcing myself to get the content done and delivering it. And again, I think Mignon was saying this, I think it's much more forgiving in a way. It seems counterintuitive, but people actually, if you are making some sort of fumble on the actual live course, nobody would ever think to comment on that. If anything, it seems endearing because you're a real person. Whereas if you had that in a live course, in a recorded course, or God forbid, an actual written book, that you had created that kind of content, that would be entirely unacceptable. But in a of course, it's perfectly okay, and yet people will value the information more and they will pay more for it.
Steph?
Exactly. Yeah. I do part of my, like once a month, I do a webinar that turns into some of the courses. And I find that, and then some of them I pre-record so that it's a mixture of the live and the not live. And I find that the chat room chatter and the questions that they ask can also help me massage it or maybe add something afterwards that I maybe wouldn't have thought of. So I find it also helps with content.
So let's talk now about like choosing platforms. I find the debate over, course platforms similar to what you see with email newsletter platforms. There are some people like me who like the Substack, where everything's kind of done for you and you have to give them a cut, but like you want simplicity, versus other people who want to maximize control. They don't want to give a huge cut to the platform, and they want like very granular design control and everything like that. Russell, I'll throw to you first, but I definitely want other people to, chime in on this. Like, what are some things you should be thinking about when if a creator is choosing a course platform, like what it should be able to offer both them and the end customer?
Well, I mean, I think you should, if I was building it from scratch, I would use Kajabi, no question, like even though it's the most expensive, because it's also got all of the things that we need. We use Teachable now and Circle and ConvertKit and Optimize Press, and like there's like 15 different things that we've had to build out across all of the functionality for that we would get natively with Kajabi. Unfortunately, both my business partner and I have used Teachable for years because it was cheap, and we were like, well, like we both I'm not migrating 30 courses over to Kajabi. So, and we already had email list stuff done with ConvertKit. So we already had a lot of this built out because we cobbled our businesses together over the course of years, like most people do. When you don't have much money, you're like, well, that's the free service, or like, that's the cheap service. So like, I'm going to use that. And over time, you're like, wow, I have a lot of things that now I have to manage constantly, which is on some level great, because like I didn't think building websites would be a thing that I would have to have competence in, but I've built like 100 now across multiple platforms, not because I wanted to, but because I had to build sales pages for this and this for that and all of these places. So like the question is not, and in fairness, Teachable's gotten a lot better since they were bought, and like there's a lot more functionality, but it's also a lot more expensive now than it was like 2 years ago. So I would say, do you want to like have the price matter the most, or do you want the convenience the most? Because it's very easy for me making multiple six figures a year to say, oh yeah, I would go to Kajabi because it's like $2,000 and like not have the headache, or $3,000. But like me 7 years ago would punch me in the face for saying that, because I didn't have $3,000 a year to like test on something that didn't work. So there's a lot of survivorship bias there that I'm acknowledging. However, it does really come down to, do you want things that are the cheapest price? Like Zenler is a great platform that is seemingly untested by like any human that I've ever met, but like it looks great. Like, do you take a chance on them, even though like they're not, like they might not exist in 2 years and you have to go build it again? Or do you go with someone like Kajabi or Teachable that like probably will exist for a long time?
So what does Kajabi offer that's so premium, that's so good?
So basically, Teachable's landing pages are garbage. So you have to have someone else to do their mailing, your sales pages. So that is included in Kajabi. That means you also have to have, really, you don't want Teachable checkout, because it's not, so like I have Thrivecart for our checkout, which then integrates with Teachable. And then they also have a much better, more robust membership community, even though I still think you should probably have Circle or Mighty Networks as your membership as well. But like all of those things are just like, we pay $100 for Circle, and like then $150 for Teachable, and then like, I don't know, a huge amount of money for ConvertKit as well. And all of these things are like included in one platform and all integrate together. And the amount of time that we spend, or not so much anymore, but for months we would spend tracking down how one integration was broken is like, and like how someone got on this list, even though we don't use that newsletter subscriber system anymore. Whereas like if I all had it in one place, I would not have any of those problems. And somewhat those problems are like fun problems for me, but they're not fun at scale when like you have, 1,000 people messaging you that like the integration between Teachable and Circle are broken, and your tech person's like, it's just broken, dude. You got to undo it because there's just nothing to do except like break it forever. And like, so those are the things. The one that really, really, really resonates with me right now is things going obsolete. And suddenly the system that you completely relied on for 5 years either no longer exists, exists in a different platform that is now 3 times the price, or they put out a new version and you do not qualify for that version unless you upgrade to the new version. And all of those things add hundreds, thousands of dollars, because you eventually say, well, I could stay on Teachable, even though they raised their price again for the 3rd year, even though they did not improve any functionality that I care about, or I could move it over to, or I could spend the 100 hours that it takes to move it to Kajabi, and I just don't have that time. So I don't know, that's a whole lot of like word salad about things you should think about, but it really comes down to, are you mostly price conscious or are you mostly convenience conscious? And depending on that, like you will pay more for a more convenient solution, and you will pay even more for a done for you solution.
Yeah, a lot of creators, they exist somewhere on that spectrum. John Gannon, you had some thoughts.
Yeah, in terms of getting started with like a course platform, and I see this actually also for creators who are just getting started with like, oh, like what email platform should I use? I lovingly or not so lovingly refer to this as the tools trap. The most important thing is to like just start and like make the thing and get it out there. In my creator journey, I started for email. I used this thing called Mad Mimi, which was like awesome, but I got to 10,000 subscribers and I'm like, you know what? I need something else. And so I moved. I'm on ConvertKit. I'm close to 30,000 subscribers now. And I fully anticipate that if my business keeps growing, I'll probably have to move again. And that's just the nature of the beast. So I think the thing you have to expect is whatever you pick, you're probably going to have to change it. So just pick something and go with it and get started, because otherwise that course that you're itching to make is like, it's never going to get to market.
Yeah, and like maybe just, I know Russell said that he had some kind of legacy stuff that made it hard to migrate, but maybe just accept those losses and move on to that new platform, and maybe not migrate over all your previous courses, but you could launch new courses or something on the new platform or something.
There is one thing that I wanted to add, because there's you use Gumroad, right, Steph? Like a lot of times you will have a system like Gumroad that sucked like 5 years ago, and you like put it out of your brain. But like I just started using Gumroad because like it's great now. Like it was not great like 3 years ago, but now it is awesome.
That's super interesting, because I've been on Gumroad forever. I actually really like the product, but since they bumped up to 10%, I'm actually relaunching a course, my original course. So I'm kind of like revamping it. And I'm going to use this as an opportunity to put it somewhere else besides Gumroad, because they've gone up now to, a 10% take rate. So I find it really interesting, like based on what you're saying about the size of your business, that you're, you must really like it, 10%. So that's a pretty sizable cut.
So I have multiple businesses that I run, and I run it for my publishing business. And for my publishing business, one thing that I wanted was a way to do a subdomain without paying $1 billion for a credit card processing. And Gumroad is the only place that will let you, that I found, that will allow you to do like store.russellnolte.com without charging a huge amount of money for it, like Shopify does and other places do.
Steph, you like the simplicity of Gumroad? I sold some ebooks on there a few years ago. I like the simplicity of the platform.
It's super easy. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, the first one that I put up, it took a minute to figure out how to change something to get the content in there. But now I can, once the content's ready, I can get it up in 5 minutes, and that's including writing copy. It's just so easy. And for me, if it's not easy to get it up there, I just won't do it. It's the same thing
Yeah.
with Substack. I love Substack because it's meant to write. It's not
Yeah.
meant to be super pretty or put tons of images or do the other things that I'm not good at, that I'm not going to do in my newsletters, but it's there to get the message out, and that's just where I lie.
Mignon, with LinkedIn Learning, they bought lynda.com, and it's like there's some kind of subscription part to it, right? Like like people will subscribe to LinkedIn Learning, and then you get paid based on how many people take the course who are subscribers or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a monthly fee to be a part of LinkedIn Learning, and then you get access to all their courses. And, a lot of big companies pay for it so that their employees just have it. Another nice thing is some people can get continuing education credits for taking the course. If they go through the extra certification process. So there's like an accounting trade thing that accountants can get credits for taking my course. I feel like I don't really have much to add about platform, because I use the platforms I use because they approached me, wanted me to do courses, made it really easy. And that's why I do it where I do it. But I will say the LinkedIn Learning people have been just fabulous. They're incredibly professional and just wonderful to work with. I love them all.
Yeah. John B, any closing thoughts on picking a platform?
Not really. I guess one thing that I'll just say is that the very first course that I created, I entirely decided to sidestep this issue, and I delivered the course by email just because I didn't want to worry about picking a platform, making this decision for the long term. And I realized that it wasn't a decision I really needed to make at that point.
Yeah, and I think what John Gannon was saying about just go for simplicity to start with, and then you can get more sophisticated as you go on. That kind of really spoke to me as someone who, like Steph, chose Substack for ease of use and stuff like that. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for doing this. This was a lot of fun. This once again a really vibrant discussion as always, and I really love doing these. I'm going to let me go ahead and stop the recording.